What if I told you that the absolute fastest way to double your authority in a room isn't by learning some new leadership skill, but by totally unlearning 5 things you probably did just this morning?
It's a pretty wild concept, right? But it's an incredibly refreshing perspective, especially for anyone who's just, exhausted by the idea of putting on a fake persona.
Oh, totally. Because we're constantly bombarded with advice about what to add to our professional tool belt. Like, take this seminar, learn this power pose, force this charismatic personality to shine.
Exactly. But today, we're doing a deep dive into a masterclass on executive presence from entrepreneur Leila Hormozi. And, well, her central framework completely flips the script on how we signal authority.
It really does, and it hinges on this brilliant analogy. Building leadership presence is essentially like sculpting a masterpiece out of a giant block of marble.
I love that analogy so much.
Right, because you don't build the masterpiece by packing on more clay or adding material. The masterpiece is already in there. You create it through subtraction.
Yes, you just relentlessly chip away every single piece of excess material that doesn't belong until the true form is revealed.
And that subtraction mindset is so vital because of how our brains actually process social hierarchy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every single time you open your mouth, or I mean, even just walk into a conference room, the people around you are making this rapid fire subconscious decision.
Like a binary assessment.
Exactly. They're instantly asking, is this someone I can trust, or is this someone I should just tune out? In high stakes environments, your influence basically lives or dies by those micro assessments.
And trust just erodes with every subtle, weak behavior you let slip.
It really does.
Which brings us to the first behavior we need to, chip away. And this is an anxiety-driven defense mechanism that I think literally almost everyone falls prey to.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, over-explaining. Hormozi actually admits in the masterclass that she used to struggle deeply with this.
She really did. She felt this nervous compulsion to just dump every piece of data, every single rationale from her brain right onto the table.
Just to make absolutely sure everyone understood her perspective.
Yeah, it's a classic overcompensation loop. When you feel misunderstood or, you lack deep internal confidence about a topic, the natural urge is to build a wall of words.
Like a verbal shield.
Exactly. But if we look at the underlying psychology of how human attention actually works, over-explaining spectacularly backfires.
Because people just stop listening.
Basically, yeah. When you talk in circles or explain the same concept 6 different ways in a single meeting, your audience doesn't think, wow, they are being remarkably thorough.
Right, they physically tune out.
They do. And even worse, they subconsciously register your endless talking as a desperate plea for validation.
Ouch. That is harsh but so true. So people who truly hold authority are the ones who pre-filter their thoughts.
Yes, they say the least, but every single word carries weight. There's a really fascinating operational example of this from her company, acquisition.com.
Ah, the quarterly offsites.
Yeah. During those offsites, when her executives have to present departmental updates, she implements this brutal constraint.
Brutal is the right word.
She tells them they can bring as many slides as they want. Like, bring 100 slides if you want. But their actual speaking time is limited to exactly 2 minutes.
Wait, 2 minutes, just two.
Just 2 minutes. That constraint forces a massive psychological shift.
I mean, I would panic.
Right. But by artificially restricting the time, she forces her leaders to distill a complex, sprawling message down to only the most crucial, needle-moving data points.
You literally don't have the time to ramble or hedge your bets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It instantly cures that nervous verbal clutter that makes leaders sound insecure, and it trains them to deliver really high-impact insights.
Okay, wait, I'm struggling with this a little bit, though. Let me push back.
Sure, go for it.
If you're dealing with a genuinely complex topic, let's say you're delivering a massive Q3 financial audit to a board of directors.
Okay.
You can't just boil that down to a 2-minute soundbite. Doesn't extreme brevity make you look unprepared? Like you haven't done the deep work to understand the nuances?
That is the exact fear that keeps people trapped in the over-explaining loop.
Really?
Yeah. We have to fundamentally reframe what authority sounds like to an audience. True authority is felt when someone speaks as if they expect to be heard, not as if they are hoping to be heard.
Expecting versus hoping. That is a massive distinction.
It's the entire ball game. When you hope to be heard, you throw a million words at the wall, hoping one of them finally resonates and proves your worth.
Ah, I see.
But when you expect to be heard, you state the facts clearly, concisely, and this is the part that terrifies most people, you pause.
You just stop talking.
You allow silence to do the heavy lifting.
Which is so hard. Because silence feels like a void that needs to be filled. Especially if you're nervous, like 3 seconds of silence feels like 3 hours.
Oh, it feels like an eternity. But that silence gives your audience the necessary time to process the weight of what you just said.
Right. Confident experts just assume you'll understand them the first time.
Precisely. They don't feel the need to justify their existence by filling dead air with filler words. Hormozy highlights a famous quote from Warren Buffett that perfectly crystallizes this.
Oh, I love this quote.
Right. He argues that the one guaranteed way to become worth 50% more than you are right now is simply to hone your communication skills.
A 50% increase in your professional value just by, cutting the verbal clutter and getting comfortable with silence. That is an incredible return on investment.
It really is.
But cutting the verbal clutter is only half the battle. Because even if you master the silence, your body can still completely betray you to the room.
Oh, big time.
Which brings us to the physical manifestation of that same insecurity, which is fidgeting.
Yeah, this dives right into the neurology of human trust. The brain is fundamentally a threat detection machine.
Okay, so we're hardwired for it.
Exactly. We are hardwired to look for incongruence in our environment. So if your voice is projecting absolute certainty, like you're saying, I firmly believe this is the right strategy,
Right.
but your hands are trembling, or you're nervously clicking a pen, or, picking at your cuticles, the brains of the people watching you detect a mismatch.
It registers as a subtle threat.
Or a deception. And human beings will always, universally, believe the nervous body over the confident voice.
It makes me think of a gorgeous $500,000 luxury sports car driving down the street.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The design is sleek, the paint is flawless, the engine sounds incredibly powerful, but the rear license plate is loose.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So as this incredible machine drives by, there is just this loud, obnoxious, high-pitched rattle, rattle, rattle.
That is the worst.
No matter how impressive the engine is, your attention is entirely hijacked by that annoying rattling noise. Fidgeting is the rattling license plate of executive presence.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. The distraction completely undermines the power. And Hormozy shares a highly practical, real-world example of this dynamic.
With her director of operations, right?
Yes. So she had a director of operations who was an absolute superstar behind the scenes. Exceptionally brilliant at project management and logistics.
What?
But the moment she had to step up and actually command the team on a Zoom call, the rattling license plate started.
What was she doing?
She would relentlessly bite her nails and play with her hair while trying to give directives.
And the solution to this wasn't some, drawn-out corporate therapy session.
No, not at all. Hormozy just told her to go get fake acrylic nails.
Which is such a funny practical fix.
Because it's a mechanical intervention to a psychological loop.
Yeah.
If you have thick acrylic nails, you physically cannot bite them the same way. It instantly broke the physical habit. And the fascinating part is, the moment she got the fake nails and stopped the nervous biting on calls, the team's perception of her completely shifted.
Just from that one change.
Less from that. They instantly viewed her as more authoritative and confident. The underlying anxiety might still have been simmering beneath the surface initially, but the physical signal of doubt was removed from the equation.
So if you're listening to this on your commute or, getting ready for your next Zoom call, think about what your hands are doing right now.
Seriously.
Think about the visual difference between a seasoned CEO and a nervous junior employee. A CEO takes up space, they're grounded,
Yeah, when they use their hands, it's intentional. They're painting a picture or emphasizing a point.
while a nervous employee is constantly in motion, slouching, rubbing their arms, adjusting their collar, basically physically trying to shrink themselves.
And we really have to look at the internal psychology of posture here. Because proprioception, which is how your brain perceives your body in space, is a two-way street.
What do you mean by a two-way street?
Well, your posture doesn't just broadcast your level of confidence to your coworkers. It broadcasts it back to your own nervous system.
Oh, wow.
Your brain constantly monitors your physical state to determine how it should feel. So when you force your body into a grounded, slow, and precise physical presence, you are literally sending neurological signals to your brain that you are safe and in control.
You can hack your way out of frantic nervous energy just by forcing stillness.
Exactly.
Okay, so once you've anchored your voice and stilled your body, you look and sound the part. But the real test of executive presence doesn't happen when everything is going perfectly according to plan.
Not at all.
The true test is how you navigate chaos. And this brings us to the third behavior you have to stop doing, asking for permission to lead.
Because leadership is never given. It's claimed through action.
Right. And Hormozy illustrates this with a profoundly relatable story from a college group project.
Oh, universal group project nightmare.
Yes. So she had been out sick with a terrible flu.
And when she finally returns to class, there's only 2 weeks left before this massive project is due. And her 3 group members haven't even started.
Typical.
Right. They're just sitting there in this cloud of ambiguity, staring at each other, waiting for someone to magically tell them what to do.
Now, the standard response in that scenario is to complain or to meekly ask the group, hey, does anyone want to take the lead on this? How should we handle it?
Instead, Hormozy went home, drafted a comprehensive project timeline, and assigned very specific deliverables to her teammates.
Like, John, you're doing the research, Sarah. You're building the deck.
Exactly. Then she called a meeting to distribute the plan. And because she took decisive action without ever pausing to ask for permission to be the leader, the entire group instantly fell into line.
They naturally started deferring to her.
They asked her for guidance from that point on.
Okay, but again, let me play devil's advocate here. That works great in a college classroom. But if I work in a highly structured corporate hierarchy with strict reporting lines, taking over a stalled project unprompted sounds like career suicide.
It can definitely feel that way.
Right. It sounds like a fast track to stepping on my boss's toes or getting written up for insubordination. How do you claim that space without coming across as a rogue, arrogant employee?
It's a really critical distinction to make. We're not talking about staging a coup or stealing someone else's official title.
Okay, good.
We are talking about claiming responsibility in moments of a leadership vacuum. When a project is stalling or a crisis hits and the path forward is ambiguous, there's a vacuum of certainty.
And human beings fundamentally crave certainty.
Deeply. Indecision breeds doubt and anxiety across a whole team. Decisiveness, on the other hand, builds momentum.
So in those moments, certainty is basically a currency.
Is the absolute most valuable currency in the room. People naturally gravitate toward whoever makes them feel secure by establishing a clear direction.
Even if it's just offering a plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you step up during a stalled initiative and say, hey, the current path isn't working, here's a proposed framework for the next week, and I will personally own these specific deliverables.
Your manager isn't going to view you as a threat.
No. They're going to be profoundly relieved. Even if solving that problem is not technically in your job description, it's your responsibility as a professional to step into the void when leadership is absent.
You take the action, you own the result, and the title eventually follows the behavior.
Spot on.
But stepping into that vacuum and taking responsibility inevitably means you are going to collide with some very uncomfortable truths.
Oh, yes. The friction is inevitable.
Which leads us to the crucible of respect. Avoiding hard conversations, this is the behavior that silently destroys careers.
Because people might not call you out to your face for dodging a tough issue, but everyone is silently keeping score.
Avoidance is like a slow, agonizing poison to your professional reputation.
Wow.
Every single time you dodge a hard truth or pretend an underperforming coworker isn't a problem, you surrender a degree of your authority.
Hormozy's masterclass anchors this with a stark quote from Mark Zuckerberg. He said, "Your job as a CEO is to be a truth teller. You have to tell the truth even if nobody else will."
Dodging a hard conversation at work is exactly like ignoring a weird rhythmic grinding sound in your car engine.
Oh man, I've been there.
Right. You don't want to deal with the mechanic, you don't want to pay the bill, so you just turn up the radio to drown out the noise.
You just avoid the short-term discomfort.
But eventually, your transmission drops out in the middle of the highway, and the damage is catastrophic.
And in a company, that catastrophic damage usually happens to team morale. The masterclass gives a very personal, non-corporate example that perfectly highlights the psychological friction of this.
The story about her friend, right?
Yeah. Hormozy had a friend who was constantly complaining about her boyfriend, always playing the victim.
We all know someone like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, this friend was doing some highly questionable, nefarious things behind the boyfriend's back.
Oh.
Yeah. And for a long time, Hormozy took the easy path. She just nodded, played the supportive friend, and listened to the complaining.
Which is what society trains us to do, honestly. Just be polite and keep the peace.
But keeping the peace was eating away at her own integrity. So eventually, she confronted the friend.
Good for her. What did she say?
She laid it out clearly. She stated that she could no longer sit through these complaining sessions unless the friend was willing to take radical responsibility for her own toxic actions in the relationship.
Wow, so she drew a hard line in the sand.
Take accountability, or we are done talking about this.
Setting a boundary like that requires a massive amount of courage. And Hormozy noted that walking away from that confrontation, despite the awkwardness, gave her this profound surge of self-respect.
It always does.
But translating that to the office is tricky. You can't just walk around the marketing department dropping brutal truth bombs on people and expect them to collaborate with you the next day.
No, definitely not.
So how do we tell the truth without becoming the office villain?
This is where the absolute crucial nuance of composure comes into play.
Composure.
Yes. The masterclass makes a sharp distinction between being aggressive and being clear. Being a truth teller isn't about raising your voice or being mean or attacking someone's character.
It's about objective clarity.
Exactly. Honesty builds trust. Softening the truth creates confusion.
Softening the truth, like wrapping a critique in so much corporate jargon that the person doesn't even realize they're failing.
Precisely. If a project is failing because a specific vendor isn't delivering, trying to soften the blow to spare someone's feelings just leaves the entire team confused about how to fix the problem.
So naming the reality calmly, objectively, and facing that discomfort head on is what makes you the definitive leader in the room.
When things go wrong, people don't seek out the nicest person. They seek out the person who has the composure to identify the actual problem so it can be solved.
And that composure under fire is exactly what separates actual leaders from people who just happen to be having a good day.
That's a great way to put it.
Because your ability to deliver hard truths means absolutely nothing if your baseline emotional state is a roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely nothing.
Which brings us to the final and arguably the most vital behavior to chip away: emotional inconsistency. If your mood dictates how you lead, you aren't actually leading.
You are just reacting to your environment.
Right. Emotional volatility is the ultimate destroyer of executive presence. You can have the perfect voice, the perfect posture, and the courage to face conflict.
So if people don't know which version of you is going to walk through the door, you have no real influence.
Exactly. And Hormozy shares a story from before her massive success, back when she was working as a personal trainer.
Yeah, she had a boss running the gym whose entire management style was entirely dictated by what happened at his house before his commute.
So his team was basically held hostage by his morning routine.
Completely. It didn't matter if the gym was breaking sales records or if the trainers were performing flawlessly. If he had a fight with his spouse or hit bad traffic, he would walk through the doors and just rain hell on everyone.
That sounds awful.
He would scream about getting their numbers up, creating totally fabricated crises, just to vent his own unregulated stress.
And because of that complete lack of emotional regulation, Hormozy lost absolutely all respect for him.
Yep. It didn't matter how well he knew fitness or sales, his inability to control his own emotional weather made him impossible to follow.
But let me push back on this one last time, because modern workplace culture puts a massive emphasis on authenticity.
Sure. Bring your whole self to work.
Exactly. We hear that all the time. Humans aren't robots. We get exhausted, we get frustrated, we have personal crises.
Of course.
If I'm having a genuinely terrible day and I try to mask it with this stoic, unwavering facade, don't I just look completely fake and disconnected from my team?
It's a really common misconception that executive presence requires you to be a robot. It is not about pretending you don't experience human emotions. It's about predictability. You can openly admit you're having a frustrating day, but your team still needs absolute certainty about how you are going to react when they bring you a problem.
Consistency is the foundation of psychological safety.
Exactly. Because if they are scared of your reaction, they start hiding the problems.
Oh, that makes total sense. If your team has to constantly check your mood or, ask your assistant what kind of mood you're in before deciding whether to report a critical error,
then they are no longer focused on executing the mission. They are entirely focused on managing you.
Wow.
Predictable emotional regulation under stress is framed in Hormozy's framework as one of the rarest, most deeply respected leadership traits in existence.
Because as you climb higher in any organization, the stakes get higher, the margins for error get smaller, and the crises get bigger.
And when a massive problem hits, the people around you will look to your face and your emotional state long before they look at the spreadsheets.
If you panic, the whole organization panics.
But if you are calm, predictable, and regulated, the organization immediately focuses on finding the solution.
So if we step back and look at the masterpiece we were trying to sculpt here, the picture becomes incredibly clear. True executive presence isn't about adopting a flashy persona or learning how to manipulate a room.
Not at all.
It's about unlearning the nervous habits that obscure the competence you already possess. It's about chipping away the desperate over-explaining, stopping the physical fidgeting that betrays your anxiety.
It's stepping into a vacuum and acting without waiting for permission.
It's having the composure to face hard conversations without flinching. And above all, it's regulating your emotional volatility so your team feels safe enough to actually do their jobs.
It really is a profound paradigm shift. It challenges almost everything we are taught about rising through the ranks.
Yeah.
And if we really absorb this subtraction mindset, it leaves us with a rather provocative question to consider.
What's that?
Well, this framework strongly argues that true authority is rooted in silence, stillness, clarity, and highly predictable emotional regulation. If that is true, does that mean the most effective, deeply trusted leaders are actually the ones who feel the most boring to observe on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, that's interesting.
Have we been entirely culturally conditioned by movies, media, and, tech bro mythology to confuse dramatic, chaotic personalities with actual leadership?
That is a fascinating thought to leave on. Maybe the ultimate masterpiece of leadership isn't supposed to be flashy or entertaining. Maybe it's just supposed to be undeniably solid.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these ideas into your workplace, start paying attention to the excess marble you can chip away, and good luck in your next meeting.